The boy was only 12 years old. His name was Cale, the son of a spaceship mechanic. He lived in a small, dusty town near the shipyards where broken engines and metal scraps filled the streets. His father worked long hours repairing old ships, and Cale often sat nearby, helping in small ways, passing tools, cleaning parts, or holding a flashlight in the dark corners of the workshop. Kyle had a habit. He hummed while he worked. Simple, soft tunes, songs he thought he had invented himself. They sounded like lullabies, gentle and slow, like a melody for a baby to sleep. No one taught him these songs. They came naturally, as if they were already inside him, waiting to be sung. His father sometimes smiled and said, "You have music in your blood, Cale, perhaps from your mother." But Cale's mother had died when he was very young, and he remembered little about her. The workshop was always filled with the sound of tools striking metal, sparks flying and heavy engines roaring. Yet in the middle of this noise, Cale's humming always stood out. His voice was clear and strangely calm, like water flowing through fire. Mechanics passing by would pause for a moment, feeling something they could not explain. Some felt peace, others felt unease. None of them knew why the boy's little songs carried such power. One evening, as the sun dropped behind the hills of steel and smoke, Kyle was sitting on the roof of the workshop. His father was still inside, fixing an engine. Cale looked up at the stars. He began humming again, letting the tune drift out into the open air. His voice echoed against the metal walls, soft but steady. Far above, beyond the night sky, something ancient listened, deep under the mountains of another world. In caverns forgotten by time, giant creatures stirred. They were warrior dragons, older than human memory, with scales black as space and eyes that glowed like fire. They had slept for centuries, waiting for a sign. Their dreams were filled with echoes of a song, the same tune Cale was humming now. The boy had no idea. He only hummed because it made him feel safe. But in that moment, his voice reached across the stars like a whisper in the dark. The dragons twitched in their slumber. One opened an eye. A deep rumble shook the cave. The world itself seemed to respond. Back in the town, strange things began to happen. A pile of metal sheets near the workshop suddenly rattled as if moved by invisible hands. Tools slid from shelves. Energy meters flickered with spikes showing signals no one could explain. Cale didn't notice. He kept humming, lost in the stars. His father came out, wiping grease from his hands. "Cale, it's late. Come inside." But even as he spoke, he felt something unusual. The air was heavy, like before a storm. He glanced at the boy, and for a moment it seemed as though Cale's voice was not just sound. It was light. A faint glow shimmered in the air, gone in a blink. The father shook his head, telling himself it was only tired eyes. He did not know his son's humming was more than a child's habit. It was a key that night, Cale dreamed. In his dream, he stood in a vast cave. The walls were covered in glowing symbols, and the ground trembled with each breath of something unseen. Then he heard it, the same song he always hummed, but louder, deeper, like a chorus of voices joining him. Out of the shadows, two enormous golden eyes opened. They were not human eyes. They belonged to a creature as large as a mountain, covered in scales that shone like molten iron. The dragon leaned close, its voice echoing in his mind. "The singer has awakened." Cale woke up sweating, his heart racing. He told himself it was only a dream, but when he looked outside his window, he froze. In the dark sky far away, a massive shadow crossed the moon. It was not a cloud. It was moving, wings spread wide. He rubbed his eyes, trying to believe it was imagination. But deep down, a strange feeling filled his chest, fear mixed with something else. The same tune rose again in his throat, unbidden. He hummed softly to calm himself. And somewhere far away, the dragon hummed back. The boy did not know it yet, but each note he sang was calling them closer. The lullaby was not his own creation. It was ancient. It was prophecy, and the world was about to change. The morning after Cale's strange dream, the workshop felt different. The sun rose, casting sharp light on the rusted metal and dusty streets, but the air seemed heavy, as if the whole town was holding its breath. Cale sat at the workbench wiping oil from an old wrench while his father argued with a customer about repair prices. Cale began to hum softly, almost without thinking. The same lullaby. His father's voice suddenly stopped. Tools clattered to the ground. A strange vibration ran through the floor of the workshop, gentle at first, then stronger. Loose bolts rolled across the table. The old radio on the shelf hissed and spat static even though it wasn't turned on. "Kyle, stop!" His father's voice was sharp, louder than usual. The boy froze, startled. Silence filled the room. The radio went quiet. The vibration faded. His father stared at him, unsettled, but said nothing more. He only picked up the wrench with shaking hands. Outside, rumors began to spread. The neighbors whispered about strange signals interfering with the town's comms. Messages sent across the network arrived scrambled, filled with strange symbols and tones no one understood. Ghost signals, the people called them. They said the shipyard was haunted or cursed. Kyle, however, did not tell anyone about his dream of the dragon's eyes. He kept it inside, though the memory clung to him like smoke. That night the town was restless. The mechanics sat in groups outside their shops, drinking cheap ale and muttering about the strange events. Some swore they heard deep rumbles underground. Others claimed the stars themselves flickered when the boy sang. Kyle tried to ignore it. He climbed to the roof again, hugging his knees, watching the stars. He promised himself he would not hum this time. But the silence pressed on him, heavy, until finally a single note slipped out, and the world answered. The ground trembled beneath the shipyard. A low, distant growl rolled through the night, too deep to be thunder, too alive to be machines. Dogs barked wildly. Birds scattered into the sky. Kale's heart pounded, but his voice did not stop. It rose stronger as though something inside him demanded it. Suddenly, a sharp flash of light shot across the sky. At first he thought it was a meteor, but then it slowed, moving with purpose. The object was massive, winged, its silhouette black against the stars. It flew with a soundless grace, but Kale could feel its presence pressing down on him like a storm. His humming faltered. The shadow passed over the workshop roof, so close the air seemed to ripple with heat. Kale ducked, trembling. For a moment he swore he heard another hum, a deep rumbling sound like his own song reflected back at him, but older, stronger. He scrambled down from the roof, breathless, rushing inside to his father. But when he opened his mouth to speak, words failed. He could not explain what he had seen. He only said, "Something's out there." His father frowned. "Dreams again?" But his voice carried no conviction. He too had felt the ground tremble. He too had heard that low growl in the night. The following day, news spread faster than fire. Satellite images captured strange shapes moving above the atmosphere. Military sensors recorded signals in frequencies no human had ever used. Some scientists claimed it was only static. Others whispered it was a language, a song. Kale sat quietly in the corner of the workshop as men in uniforms came to question the townspeople. They asked about the signals, about the strange vibrations. They placed scanners in the streets, recording every sound. One soldier even glanced at Kale with suspicion, as though he knew. That night, Kale did not dare hum. He pressed his hands over his mouth, holding back the tune that wanted to rise in his chest. But the silence did not protect him. When he finally fell asleep, he dreamed again. This time he stood in an endless desert of black sand. The sky above was red, the air filled with ash. From the horizon, dozens of massive shapes emerged. Dragons, their wings blotting out the sky. Their eyes glowed, burning like suns, and from their throats came a sound that shook the world. The same lullaby sung as a war chant. Kyle woke gasping, his pillow wet with sweat. He rushed to the window. The streets were quiet, but in the distance beyond the hills, he saw lights flickering in the clouds. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at him. By dawn, the soldiers reported unexplained aerial activity. Farmers claimed their animals were restless, refusing to eat. Strange symbols appeared on their screens when they tried to use the network. Always the same pattern, curved lines, circles, spirals like scales. The whispers grew. The old beasts are waking. It's an omen. Someone is calling them. And in the middle of it all was a boy who only wanted to hum simple songs. Kale still did not understand, but deep inside he felt the truth waiting. Something was listening. Something was answering, and it was getting closer. The town was not the same anymore. For days, strange events kept happening. Machines flickered on without power, animals refused to sleep, and the night sky was never quiet. People whispered of storms with no clouds and shadows moving across the stars. Everyone felt it. Something old was waking. Far away, beyond human maps, deep inside mountains of black stone, the dragons stirred. They had slept for centuries, buried in silence, waiting for a voice to call them. Their scales glowed faintly in the dark, etched with patterns of fire. Their breath shook dust from the ceilings of ancient caves. One by one, massive golden eyes opened in the darkness. They remembered the song, the lullaby, the prophecy etched in their very bones. When the child of iron and flame sings, the warriors shall rise. Kale was that child, though he did not know it yet. His soft humming had crossed the void, carried by something no scientist could measure. To the dragons, it was not just sound, it was command. Back in the shipyard town, Kale tried to live normally, but normal had vanished. Everywhere he went, people stared at him. The mechanics whispered behind his back. Soldiers watched his every move, pretending to guard the streets but keeping their eyes locked on him. Even his father seemed different, tired, afraid, though he never admitted it. One evening, Kyle sat by the window staring at the horizon. His fingers tapped against the glass. Without meaning to, he began humming again. The sound was quiet, almost like breathing. But the world responded. The earth trembled beneath the town so softly that cups rattled on shelves. People ran into the streets, shouting. The night sky lit up with a strange orange glow far beyond the hills. And then a sound broke the air, a roar so deep and powerful that windows cracked and the ground shook. Kale froze, his voice dying in his throat. From beyond the hills, a shape rose. At first it seemed like a mountain lifting itself from the earth. Then wings spread wide, unfolding with the force of storms. A dragon, enormous and ancient, launched into the sky. Its scales burned like molten rock, and fire traced along its body as if it carried the heart of a star. The people screamed. Soldiers shouted orders, pointing weapons at the sky. But the dragon did not attack. It circled above, slow and steady, and then lowered itself toward the town. Kyle could not breathe. His heart pounded, his ears rang, but his body moved on its own. He stepped outside, standing in the open as the ground shook with every beat of the dragon's wings. The creature landed just beyond the town, crushing trees beneath its claws. Dust and fire filled the air, its golden eyes locked on Kale. Not the soldiers, not the townspeople. Only him. Kale felt his knees weaken. His father shouted from behind, "Kyle! Get back!" But the boy could not move. Something stronger than fear held him in place. The dragon lowered its head. Its breath rolled out like smoke, hot and heavy. The sound that came from its throat was not a roar, but something else, low, steady, almost familiar. It was humming, the same lullaby. Kyle's lips trembled. Without realizing, he answered. His voice rose, soft but steady, carrying the tune into the night air. The dragon stilled, listening. The fire along its scales dimmed, glowing gently instead of burning. Slowly it lowered itself further, pressing its massive head into the dirt. Above, the people gasped. Soldiers froze, unsure whether to shoot or kneel. Kale's father stood pale, gripping a wrench in his shaking hands, powerless to stop what was unfolding. The boy's song faded into silence. The dragon remained bowed, waiting. Its golden eyes glowed brighter, and Kale felt something shift inside his mind. A presence, a voice that was not spoken but felt. Singer. "We have waited." Kale stumbled back, clutching his chest. He had heard the words without sound, deep inside his head. He looked around, but no one else reacted. Only he had heard it. More roars echoed in the distance, not one, not two, dozens. The hills shook as shadows rose against the stars. Dragons wing after wing, flame after flame. The sky filled with their shapes, glowing like a storm of living fire. Panic spread. The town was chaos, people running, soldiers aiming weapons, alarms blaring. But Kale did not move. His feet felt planted to the earth. His lullaby had become a beacon, and the army of dragons was answering. One soldier shouted, "They're coming for the boy." His words cut through the noise like a blade. Instantly, others turned toward Kale, weapons raised, not at the dragons, but at him. Kale's father leapt in front of him, shouting, "Stay back!" But even he looked terrified, unsure whether to protect his son or fear him. The dragons circled closer, their roars blending into a song that rattled the sky. Kale's chest tightened. His whole body shook. He did not understand, but he knew one truth. The lullaby was no longer just his. It belonged to them all. And the beasts of legend had awakened. The world was no longer quiet. After the dragon's arrival, nothing was the same in Kalestown. Soldiers surrounded the area with heavy machines. Scientists carried scanners through the streets and frightened families packed their bags to leave. Yet the dragon that bowed to Kale did not move. It stayed near the hills, watching, waiting. For 3 days and nights the creature remained there, its glowing eyes fixed on the boy whenever he stepped outside. The soldiers tried to drive it away with weapons, but every time they aimed their cannons, the dragon only growled, shaking the ground, forcing them to lower their guns. Kyle stayed mostly inside the workshop with his father, but whispers spread faster than fire. The boy controls them. The boy is the danger. Some feared him. Some wanted to worship him. But all agreed on one thing. The lullaby was no ordinary tune. Far away, in a city of steel towers, leaders gathered. Generals, scholars, and priests sat around a long table, each holding a copy of the same fragile text, a translation of ancient tablets discovered years ago in forgotten ruins. Most had dismissed the writing as myth. Now, with dragons awake, it demanded attention. One line stood out. When the child of iron and flame sings the song of ages, the warriors of scale shall rise. He shall command them, and the fate of mankind shall turn. The generals spoke of using the child as a weapon. The priests argued that he was sacred. The scholars said he was a threat. But none of them could deny the prophecy matched what was happening, and so they sent for the boy. Kyle sat nervously in a dark vehicle as soldiers drove him to the city. His father was beside him, silent, gripping Kale's hand tightly. Outside the window, the world looked different. Fields were burned, skies filled with smoke. The dragons were moving, not just one, but many. Reports said entire flocks were flying over oceans, mountains, and deserts, their wings blocking out the sun. The vehicle stopped at a tall building with armed guards. Kyle was led inside, where men in uniforms and long robes waited. They placed the old tablets before him, symbols carved in stone, spirals, flames, and what looked like musical notes. A scholar leaned forward. "Do these mean anything to you?" Kale shook his head. He didn't know how to read the ancient writing. But as his eyes lingered on the carving, something stirred inside him. A tune rose in his throat, uninvited. The lullaby again. His voice filled the hall, soft but clear. The tablets glowed faintly. Gasps filled the room. The symbols lit up with fire as Kale sang, casting shadows across the walls. His voice blended with an echo that wasn't his own. For a moment, everyone heard it. The sound of thousands of voices, deep and ancient, singing with him. The priests fell to their knees. The generals whispered curses, and Kale stopped, terrified. "I didn't mean to," he said quickly. "It just came out." But the hall was silent now, except for one whisper among the priests. "The prophecy lives." That night, Kyle was kept under guard in a cold chamber. His father was not allowed inside. He sat alone, staring at the walls, humming quietly to himself. Then a voice entered his mind, not his own, but heavy, vast, and filled with fire. "Singer, do not fear," Kale gasped, pressing his hands to his head. "Who are you?" He whispered. "We are the children of flame. You are the one who wakes us." Visions filled his eyes. Dragons soaring through skies of long-forgotten worlds, humans standing beside them, fighting together in wars older than history. Once man and dragon had been allies, but greed and fear had broken the bond, sealing the beasts away in eternal sleep. "Your voice is the bridge," the dragon said. "Through you the pact may return, or be broken forever." Kale trembled. He was only a boy. He never asked for this, but deep inside he knew the truth. The lullaby was not his invention. It was memory, an ancient key carried in his blood. The next day the generals demanded he sing for them again. "Control them," they ordered. "Command the beast to kneel before us. With dragons we will rule the stars." Kale's father argued, shouting that his son was not a weapon. But the soldiers dragged the man away. Kale stood trembling in front of the leaders. The lullaby burned in his chest, begging to be released. He closed his eyes, and when he sang, the sky answered. The building shook as a shadow passed overhead. Windows shattered from the force of wings. A dragon, larger than any before, landed outside, its roar shaking the ground. The soldiers panicked, raising their weapons, but the beast ignored them. Its eyes glowed, locked only on Kale. The boy's voice faded. The dragon lowered its massive head until its snout pressed against the building. Dust fell from the ceiling. Everyone inside stared in stunned silence. Kale opened his eyes. The dragon's golden gaze met his, and in his mind he heard the words again. Singer, lead us. For the first time, Kale understood the weight of the prophecy. It was not only about awakening the dragons, it was about choosing the path ahead. If he obeyed the generals, the beasts would become weapons of war. If he refused, humans might turn against him. He stood between two worlds, human and dragon, and his choice would shape both. The boy, once only a mechanic's son, had become the center of an ancient destiny, and the world was watching. The prophecy spread like fire. Within days, every screen, every broadcast, every whisper carried Kale's name. Some called him the Singer of Dragons. Others called him the end of mankind, but the boy himself sat quietly in his chamber, his face pale, his mind torn. He did not want power. He did not want armies. He only wanted his father, his workshop, and the simple safety of ordinary life. Yet outside, the world boiled with fear. The generals met in secret. Their voices were sharp, filled with anger. "He controls them," one said. "He is them," another spat. "If he sides with the beasts, humanity is finished." The decision was made in a single breath. The boy cannot be free. That night, Kale was woken by the sound of boots. Soldiers entered his chamber, their faces cold, weapons glowing in the dim light. His father was with them, bound at the wrists, struggling to speak. "Father," Kale cried. One soldier barked an order. "Silence. You're coming with us." Kale's chest tightened. He knew this was not a request. The generals no longer wanted his guidance. They wanted control or death. His father's eyes, wide with fear, said what words could not. "They are going to take you away." Kale's body shook, but a sound rose in his throat, soft at first. A hum. The soldiers stiffened, their weapons aimed higher. "Stop him," one shouted, but it was too late. The dragon outside roared. The walls trembled. Soldiers stumbled as dust rained down from the ceiling. The massive creature pushed its head against the building, protecting Kale with fire in its eyes. Panic erupted. Some soldiers ran. Others opened fire, their weapons flashing. The dragon bellowed, flames spilling across the night sky, but it did not attack the town. It shielded the boy, its body forming a living wall between Kale and the soldiers. In the chaos, Kale's father broke free, rushing to his son. "We have to go," he shouted. Kale's feet barely moved, but his father dragged him through the smoke, through the broken doors, and into the dark streets. Behind them, alarms screamed. Voices shouted orders. More soldiers chased. The boy turned once to look back. He saw men firing at the dragon, and the dragon not striking back, only roaring in fury, its golden eyes fixed on him. The voice entered his head again. "Singer, come to us, lead us." They ran until their lungs burned. The shipyard streets were empty now, deserted by families who had fled in fear of the dragons. Kale's father pulled him into the shadows of an abandoned warehouse. "Why?" Kale gasped. "Why are they trying to take me?" His father's face was hard. "Because they're afraid. Afraid of what you are. Afraid of what you might become. To them, you are not my son anymore. You're a weapon or a threat." Tears filled Kale's eyes. "I never wanted this." "I know," his father whispered, pulling him close. "But wanting doesn't matter. The world has chosen you. Now we must choose whether to run or to fight." Outside, the sky burned. More dragons had arrived. Their shadows stretched across the hills, their roars like drums shaking the earth. Entire armies moved to face them, tanks rolling, ships circling in the air. Humans and dragons stood at the edge of war, and in the middle of it all was a boy. Kyle could feel the song inside him, stronger than ever, begging to be released. But for the first time he feared it. Every note he sang seemed to pull the dragons closer, binding them to him. Was he saving them or dooming mankind? A noise cut through his thoughts. The warehouse door creaked. Soldiers poured in, flashlights sweeping the dark. "There," one shouted. His father stood in front of him, holding only a wrench against rifles. "Run, Kale!" he yelled. "No!" Kale screamed, clutching his father's arm. "I won't leave you!" But the soldiers advanced. Their leader raised a hand. "Take the boy alive. Kill the man if he resists." Betrayal cut deeper than fear. Kyle had once believed humans would protect him. Now they aimed their guns at his father. Something broke inside him. The lullaby rose, not gentle this time, but fierce. His voice shook the walls. Windows shattered. Soldiers stumbled, covering their ears. The dragons answered. The warehouse roof tore open as a massive claw crushed through steel. A dragon's head forced its way inside, golden eyes blazing. Soldiers scattered in terror. The beast roared, its fire sweeping across the floor, but careful, so careful not to touch the boy. Kale's father pulled him into the dragon's shadow. The heat scorched their skin, but they were unharmed. Soldiers fled into the night, their cries echoing. Kale's voice faded, his throat raw. The dragon bent low, bowing its head. "Why me?" Kyle whispered, tears streaking his face. "I don't want this." In his mind, the dragon's voice answered, "Because you are the bridge. Without you, we destroy. With you, we unite." The town burned that night, not from the dragons, but from the clash between soldiers and fire. People spoke of betrayal, of fear, of a boy hunted by his own kind. Cal sat in the shadows, holding his father's hand. He no longer felt like a child. He felt like something caught between two worlds, human and dragon, hunted by both. The prophecy was no longer just words on a tablet. It was alive, bleeding into every moment of his life. And Kyle knew the truth now. He was no longer safe anywhere. The world would not stop chasing him, and soon, he would have to choose. The world had split into two. On one side stood mankind, armies, governments, weapons ready to burn the skies. On the other side, the dragons, ancient, vast, their wings blotting out the stars. And between them, caught like a fragile thread, stood Kyle. The boy no longer felt like a boy. His humming was no longer innocent, no longer just a habit. It was power, a voice that could move giants. Everywhere he went, dragons followed. Everywhere he sang, armies gathered. And everywhere the same question pressed upon him. Whose side will you choose? Kale and his father hid in the ruins of an old ship hangar. Fires burned on the horizon. The world was breaking apart. His father watched him with weary eyes, eyes that carried love but also fear. "Kale," he said softly, "we can't run forever. Sooner or later you must decide. Humans want to control you. Dragons want to follow you. If you remain silent, both will destroy each other. If you sing, you choose a side." Kyle hugged his knees, staring at the floor. "Why me, father? I never asked for this. I'm just your son. I don't want to be anyone's leader." His father placed a hand on his shoulder. "I know, but fate doesn't ask what we want. It asks what we will do." That night, Kale dreamed again. He stood on a cliff of stone, staring down at two vast armies. On one side, soldiers in steel, weapons glowing. On the other, dragons of flame, their wings trembling with rage. Both sides screamed for battle. Above the chaos, a voice whispered in his mind. "Singer, command us, choose." Kale trembled. His throat burned with song. He opened his mouth and woke to the sound of sirens. The hangar shook. Outside, the ground thundered with marching boots. Soldiers had found them. His father grabbed his arm. "They're here!" Before they could run, the walls burst open. Light flooded in, blinding. Rows of armored men stood with rifles raised. The commander stepped forward. His face was hard, his voice sharp. "Boy, come willingly and no blood will be spilled." "Refuse and your father dies." Kale froze. His chest tightened. Fear gripped him like chains. His father pushed him behind. "Don't listen." "They'll use you, Kale. They'll turn you into their weapon." The soldiers aimed their rifles. Kale's throat burned again. He wanted to scream. He wanted to run. But above the noise, another sound came. A roar. The dragons had arrived. The roof tore apart as wings blotted out the sky. Fire lit the clouds red. Shadows of giants descended, roaring like thunder. The soldiers stumbled, raising weapons toward the heavens. The ground cracked beneath the dragon's landing, and suddenly Kale was caught between them. The commander shouted, "Sing! Make them kneel! Prove your loyalty to your own kind." The dragons roared into Kale's mind. "Sing! Lead us and we will burn your enemies to ash." Kale's heart raced. Sweat poured down his face. His father gripped his arm desperately. "Kale, listen to me. Machines or beasts, you don't have to be either. You can be something more. You can be the bridge. Bridge." The word struck him like lightning. He looked around. The soldiers shaking, fingers tight on their triggers, eyes filled with fear. The dragons snarling, wings beating, fire burning in their throats, waiting for his command. Both sides wanted only war. Both sides wanted him to choose, but Kale's voice rose differently this time. Not a lullaby. Not a war chant. Something new. He sang. At first the sound was soft, like water dripping in a cave. Then it grew, rising, trembling, weaving notes he had never sung before. His voice carried sorrow and hope, fear and courage. It was not the song of humans. It was not the song of dragons. It was both. The air shimmered. The guns rattled in soldiers' hands. Fire dimmed in the dragons' throats. Every ear, human and beast, turned to him. His father fell silent, eyes wide, tears on his cheeks. The soldiers lowered their rifles, trembling. The dragons folded their wings, bowing low. For the first time in centuries, silence filled the battlefield. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of peace. Kale's song faded. The air stilled, and then, nothing. The commander's voice broke the moment. "This is impossible." His rifle slipped from his hands. The lead dragon bent its massive head, golden eyes glowing softly. "Singer," it whispered into Kale's mind. "You have chosen no side. You have chosen the path between." Kyle's knees gave out. He fell to the ground, gasping, his voice gone raw. His father rushed to hold him. Soldiers stared, unsure if they had just witnessed a miracle or the start of something greater. The dragons lifted their heads, their roars no longer screams of war, but echoes of Kale's song. A harmony that shook the stars. Kale whispered hoarsely, "I don't want to be a weapon. I don't want to be a god. I just want both to live." The dragon's voice was calm. "Then you must lead with a song that unites, not divides." That night, across the world, wherever dragons had risen and humans had raised their weapons, the fighting stopped. Both sides turned their eyes upward, listening to the echo of a boy's voice carried across the skies. Kale was no longer only a mechanic's son. He was no longer just the singer of dragons, he was the choice itself, the bridge between two worlds that had been enemies for too long. But he also knew one truth: peace was fragile. Both humans and dragons would test him again. Some would betray, some would demand war. His song had stopped the battle today, but tomorrow was uncertain, and deep in the stars something else was stirring. Something older, darker, listening to his song. The child had chosen, but his story was far from over. The world held its breath. Across mountains, oceans, and endless skies, humans and dragons stood still, waiting for the boy. His voice had stopped a war, but silence could not hold forever. Weapons still glimmered in the hands of men. Fire still burned in the throats of beasts. All eyes turned to Kale, the child who had sung an ancient prophecy awake. Kale sat on the cracked earth, his throat raw, his chest heavy. His father knelt beside him, wiping soot from his face. "You did it, Kyle," he whispered. "You stopped them." But Kale shook his head. He could feel it deep inside his bones, in the very air around him. This was not the end. It was only the pause before the storm. The prophecy was clear. The singer shall awaken the warriors, and the fate of mankind shall turn. But which way it would turn, toward peace or destruction, remained unwritten. As night fell, Kale walked to the center of the field where dragons and soldiers faced one another. His small figure was almost swallowed by the shadows of giants and the glare of guns. Yet when he raised his hand, silence rippled across both armies. His voice trembled at first. "Humans fear the dragons. Dragons remember the betrayal of humans. You both see enemies, but I see family. My father built machines with his hands, and yet my voice wakes creatures of flame. I am both, I am neither. I am the bridge." His words echoed, but the silence that followed was heavy. Soldiers shifted uneasily. Dragons growled low in their throats. The fragile peace quivered like glass. Kale closed his eyes. He could not end this with words alone. The world needed more, so he sang. This time it was not a lullaby. It was not the war chant he had heard in dreams. It was something new, something born in the space between fear and hope. His voice rose like a spark and spread like fire, carrying across the hills, the skies, the very stars. The sound wrapped around humans, softening the iron in their hearts. It wrapped around dragons, cooling the flames in their throats. Soldiers lowered their rifles, trembling not from fear but from wonder. Dragons folded their wings, their eyes glowing not with rage but with light. Kale's father wept quietly, knowing his son was doing what no man or beast could ever do alone. The armies bowed, not to power, not to fear, but to the song. But then, the ground trembled. The air split with a sound deeper than any roar. The stars themselves seemed to flicker. From far beyond the sky, something ancient stirred. Kyle's song had reached further than dragons. A shadow moved across the heavens, vast and endless, blotting out constellations. It was older than dragons, older than mankind. The air grew heavy, filled with whispers like 1,000 broken voices. The soldiers looked upward, pale with terror. Even the dragons shivered, folding their wings, lowering their heads in fear. Kyle staggered, his song faltering. What is that? He gasped. The lead dragon's voice thundered in his mind. The old ones. They were sealed before even we were born. Your song has woken them. A massive shape broke through the clouds, neither beast nor machine, but something in between. Its body was shadow, its eyes endless void. It was not alive as men or dragons were. It was hunger, given form. The armies broke. Soldiers screamed. Dragons roared in fury. Chaos was ready to erupt again. Kale's father grabbed him. Stop, don't sing. They'll come for you. But Kale understood now. His song was not only a call, it was a choice. He could summon destruction, or he could summon unity, and if unity could tame dragons, maybe it could reach even deeper. He stepped forward, his small body shaking against the storm. His voice rose once more, louder, fiercer, burning through the terror. He sang not for humans, not for dragons, not even for himself. He sang for all of them, for every creature, every soul that carried fear in its heart. The sound was light in darkness. It struck the shadow creature like fire against ice. The void eyes flickered. The whispers faltered. The earth trembled, but this time it was not breaking. It was healing. Humans fell to their knees, dropping their weapons. Dragons lifted their heads, roaring in harmony, joining the song. For the first time in all of history, men and beasts sang together. The shadow let out one final scream, its body unraveling into mist, scattered by the harmony. The sky cleared, the stars returned, and silence fell. Not heavy this time, but peaceful. Kyle collapsed, his voice gone, his strength drained. His father caught him, tears streaming. You saved us, Kale. You saved us all. The dragons bowed, wings folded, eyes glowing like suns. Soldiers bowed too, their weapons forgotten in the dirt. For one heartbeat the world was united. Kyle whispered, his voice barely a breath. This is the final song. But even as he closed his eyes, the prophecy whispered in the wind. The singer's voice shall echo beyond time. When one song ends, another begins. Somewhere deep in the cosmos, far beyond human reach, something else had heard. Kale had brought peace to men and dragons, but his song was still traveling, and the universe was listening.